Hi, I'm Mac McCarthy, and I help people with their breakups. And today we have an excellent show on deck for you. Real breakup stories unpacked. I'm Mac McCarthy, and I help people with their breakups. If you want to send your story into writemac.com, WRITEMAC.com, and get your story unpacked in a live stream like this, do it. It's a small fee, $25, but I think it's worth it. Anyhow, we have an interesting story on deck today. I haven't read it fully yet. It's long. First love reconnected after 30 years. Tommy Willis on deck. Welcome. So today, like I said, I'm going to get into this story. I usually like to have about 10 on deck before I start. I just reconnected with a past client, and I'm going to start doing this year, where if we had live coaching sessions, I'm going to reach out and see if you want to come on the live stream, and if you don't, that's fine. I still want to follow up. I'm excellent, Linder, too. I just want to follow up with past clients and talk, and it was great because he's going to do a live stream sometime this week. He wants to discuss how he got through his original issue. Now he's with a girlfriend, some issues he's had with that, and some of the things I've done with him in coaching. But also, I think he got a lot out of the idea of, we just talked for an hour plus. And he was saying, man, you know, you're more than just a breakup coach. And that's a huge compliment. But it's actually evolved into that, because when you get deep with someone over a breakup or at that time in their life, and you can help them out, you're bonded. You're bonded. And so when you want to talk about some other things that are going on with work or finances, or let me add this, there's a lot of petty stuff that goes down. There's a lot of petty stuff that people think. Eduardo Martinez, thank you kindly for the donation. I really appreciate it, bud. There's a lot of petty stuff that goes on in your life, myself included, that you get caught up in or you get stuck on. And if me and you have a history and you want to talk about it, and this is what I just called him originally to kind of get into what we'll talk about in the live stream, but he had a couple things going on currently. Just some knick-knack type things with his current girlfriend. Nothing too serious, but we unpacked it, and he was like, I didn't look at it that way. And he was like, I should actually, you know, maybe call you more often, but I think of you as just breakups, but you're actually more. And I'm going to evolve what I do into the next step's going to be hypnotherapy. So I've been doing that with clients. I haven't been advertising on my site. But I think that's one of the best ways for people to let go of disempowering beliefs and things that they're holding on to. I've done it before. It worked quite well. And I'm willing to go all in on it moving forward. I'm going to look into some programs today. I do it on my own now, but hypnotherapy, as far as different types of therapy, I think it cuts to the roots of things, and it gets away from talking. Talking's good. There's a place for talking about your breakup or talking about your problems. There's a place for it. But at some point, you do want to move forward. You do want to realize why you're having these problems, because it's all perception. I mean, don't underestimate that or undervalue what I just said. It's all perception. Your perception's based on your life experiences. And when you're perceiving things in a certain way, whether they're negative, positive, neutral, or just not favorable to you moving forward, that's the problem. That's the problem in a lot of cases. So today, like I said, I just got this story a couple days ago. And like I said, I haven't gone through it But first love reconnected after 30 years. Oh my goodness. People ask, are we going to ever get back together? She'll never come back. He'll never come back. Well, who knows if it's 30 years from now. And I immediately tell people all the time, get rid of the word never and ever, because what does that even mean? Nothing's eternal, including your relationships, including your life, as deep as that sounds. So we really need to eliminate the idea that if you break up with an ex, you'll never meet them again. You'll never see them again. It's possible. But what I've noticed in my own life, and I've noticed from other people, they bubble up. They pop up. Maybe you're not going to get back together, but if you were together 2, 3, 4 years, 5 years, and it was good, and you shared some love, real love, defined love by you, at some point they're going to hit you up. And like I said, it doesn't mean you're going to maybe get back together. But I just had a client that reached out to me recently that his ex, he's 23, 24 years old, and his ex from his teenage years when he was 15 to 18 or something like that, and they broke up, and it was his first love, and this, that, and the other. She reached out 5 years later before she was getting married, and she wanted to have a drink with him and talk. And she said to him, why didn't you call me? Why were you able to not call me? Did you even care? And he's saying to me, I was wondering the same thing about her at the time. Connections that involve real love and connection and deepness, people don't forget you. And I'll tell you when they call. When do you think they call? We got Tommy, Lindertube, Ozzy, 411, Eduardo Martinez. When do you think an ex will call you up years later? I'm not talking about months later, but years later. When do you think they call you up? Do you think they call you up when they're married and they're with someone else and they're happy as can be and everything's going right? Ozzy401 says, I had a girlfriend come back after 3 decades. Translation, 30 years. Decades is cooler, though. Found me on Facebook all the way from university, and I didn't even remember her. And another scanless honey also. Well, I mean, Facebook's a little bit more passive than reaching out. Again, when someone reaches out, it doesn't mean they want to get back together. But my point is, when do you think they do reach out and think of you? I'll tell you an interesting story before we get, because like I said, I want a few more on deck before I get into the story that was sent in, which is First Love Reconnected After 30 Years. She titled it herself. My aunt, whom, from what my mom told me, was quite attractive and got a lot of attention when she was young, high school and in her 20s. And you know what? My aunt's still great personality, attractive, whatnot. She's in her 60s now, though, or late 50s or early 60s. Anyhow, my mom said there's a lot of guys chasing her when she was young. My mom had 2 sisters, so there's three sisters, and she was the one that got the most attention for sure. Anyhow, there was a guy in high school that chased her for years, and never got her. My aunt was married 2 times, long-term relationships. I won't get into that. But anyhow, this guy, I think about 10 years ago. So let me put this in perspective. If they were in high school, it's probably a good 30 years after high school. She was in her 50s. Now, she was recently widowed. She was widowed, and the guy had contacted her within about a year or 2 years after her husband had passed away. I'm not sure if he knew about that or not. Anyhow, the timing was that. So he gets in contact with her. He finds her. I don't know if it was through a reunion. I'm not sure of how he got into contact, but he was living in another state. I believe he was living in Georgia, and my aunt was still in California. And my aunt remembers him, right? It was someone from high school. He always had a crush on her. He always chased her. And, you know, things just didn't line up. I don't know how much interest she had in him, but he came out of nowhere. Extremely successful. I think he was quote unquote rich, and I think he had some political career, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure of that. Let's just say successful and rich. Is that enough? So he, you know, of course, wanted to fly her out, wanted to meet her in hotels, wanted to, you know, I'll pay for everything. I still am in love with you, were his words. And she was caught off guard, right? She's like, of course I remember him from high school, and they had the same circle of friends, whatnot. But I think it was flattering, but she was still a bit wounded from her husband passing away, but at the same time a little overwhelmed. But here's the catch. The guy was still married. The guy was still married. But classic, oh, the marriage is over, we, you know, the kids are grown, we just kind of stay together. Like, this is very common, especially when money's involved. My aunt was uncomfortable with this. And she was just overwhelmed with the idea that he was just throwing trips and hotels and stuff like that at her. It was all unexpected. It was all full on. I guess you could call it love bombing, as some people say. And she was caught off guard. I think, like I said, she still was widowed freshly, if that makes sense. And from the outside in, her friends, family members were like, go for it. You know, especially individuals that are like, you always need to have a man, or so she entertained it. Like, she met up with him and whatnot, and she just felt like the feelings weren't there. I think what it was too full on, and I think he assumed that because he had money and he was successful, and the part of the story I'm missing, that if I could interview my aunt about it, it would be interesting. She would be great on Mike, by the way. She's funny. The part that was missing about it, I don't know what his personality was in high school, because if he was kind of a dork, or he was, how did she look at him in high school? Because it sounded like he wanted to prove to her how great he was now. And that would sort of erase the fact that she wasn't attracted to him in high school, because there was some reason that she didn't go after him in high school if she knew he liked her. And the fact that she knew he was chasing her all those years. Anyhow, is it a little bit creepy if you're someone that had a crush on you shows up 30 years later and gets your contact and then just goes, I'm rich, I'd like to take care of you, I have money, I have this, I have that. She ended up not pursuing it. I don't want to say cold shoulder, because I don't remember the specifics, because it was a secondhand story. Like I said, I'd have to interview my aunt about it. Maybe I'll do that in the future. And the twist of the story, I think 2 or 3 years later, the guy passed away from, he had gotten cancer. So I don't know if he knew that going into that or not. But my point is, if someone has deep feelings for you and deep desire, whether that was during the breakup, whether that was a crush, you're not going to elude their thoughts over time. They're gonna think about you. Now, when I asked earlier, I said, what do you think is the most common time period that someone, and I'm talking years later. This isn't like where you break up to make up or you get back together after 5-6 months. I'm saying that this is years later. Let's say 2, 3, 4 plus years later, 10 years later. Why do you think they hit you up? Why do you think they hit you up? What do you think it is? I have my own idea, and I'll share that in a moment, but I'd like to hear if anyone from the live stream thinks. Why would you think years later someone comes out of the blue to contact you that was a breakup? I know there's a little delay on the mic, so. All right, well, here's mine. A lot of times they're hitting you up out of nowhere years later because they're single or they have issues in their current relationship. Surprise, surprise. Because they haven't found anyone better, because you're the one that got away. Grass isn't greener syndrome is one of the reasons. Residual feelings, curiosity. They have no options. That when they open the book. All relevant to my point. Even if they're just like, hey, how you doing? Like a feeler. It means that they're currently single or they're currently in a relationship they're not happy with, that they're thinking of getting out of, and they're lining up, wow, is this still an option? But it's not necessarily one of those things where it's like this situation that I just told you, this story where they're full on and they're going to meet up with you. It's usually like, hey, Sally, how have you been? It's a feeler. And it's a compliment to the relationship you had, because they're basically saying, they'd like to revisit the relationship at some point. I don't think they just generally call to see how you're doing. They want to see where you're at. They reach out when they feel vulnerable, and the last memory feeling safe was with you. Okay, nice one, Clutch. A lot of reasons will change with various ages. Yep. I think the Facebook thing, especially for decades later, is a little bit more passive. That can be one of those situations where someone's happily married and you were in high school or college with them and they're like, oh God, I haven't seen Rick in years, and they just send him a friend thing. But the point is, when someone reaches out to you, that means that they're in a space where the timing's right for them too. Curiosity is a bit enticing when you have history, wondering how you've changed. Revisit their former self a bit. Phlox 94110. What zip code is that, out of curiosity, Phlox? Mac, I'd like your take on the idea that signaling someone as manipulating you as a hint of not being accountable for what you accept. The idea that no one is going to save you from your own choices. The idea that signaling someone as manipulating you as a hint of not being accountable for what you accept. Mission District? Really? San Francisco's finest? San Francisco is a 94110. Josh, what's up? How you doing, bud? Nice. I was thinking if that's you or not. Right on, man. You're going to have to come on the live stream one day and kick some knowledge. Right on. People self-reflect on themselves by reconnecting with people in their past life. When I lived in the city, Josh, I don't think it was 94410 when I lived in the near the Sunset. What was it? 94116. Yeah, I lived near West Portal. In between West Portal and 19th. Getting back to Skinner, Mac, I'd like your take on the idea that signaling someone as manipulating you has a hint of not being accountable for what you accept. I agree. I think that a lot of times people, I call it whistleblowing rather than signaling. Like they want to point out, this person did me wrong, this person did this and this to me. And we all kind of do that. And we feel validated by it. But the reality is you had a role in how long you accept it. If you're naive or ignorant, and when I say ignorant means you just don't know what you don't know. It doesn't mean you're stupid. That's actually an ignorant response to the definition of ignorance. So what I would say to that, Skinner, is there are naive, gullible individuals that lack life experience, dare I say street smarts, or just smarts in relationships, and they don't read things well. And so when they get manipulated, they feel victimized. They feel taken advantage of. But the reality is that's their lesson, right? How does someone gain street smarts? How does someone gain knowledge in a particular area? A lot of times it's not just from a chalkboard. That's an old school term at this point in the world, but it's actually from experience. So what would be the worst thing is you get manipulated and by the way, you can get manipulated in different ways. For example, if we're going to talk about relationships, a lot of men are manipulated by what? A good piece of pie. Right? A lot of men are manipulated by beauty. The amount of guys that will deal with a bad relationship or chase a woman in the name of her being beautiful or gorgeous. And I'm not upset with that. I don't think men are honest about it. I think that when I see someone chasing a woman or a relationship that doesn't seem good for them, and they know it, it's either intimacy is really good or beauty is really good. And then you ask them about trust, and they're like, it's a 1. You ask them about connection, it's like a 6. You want a long-term relationship? Connection and chemistry, you know, how you conversate, how you get on with each other, how you finish each other's sentences, you share some similar values, right? That should be going between 6 and 10 all the time. Attraction and intimacy is one of those things that's fleeting. That's always going to be up and down. If you got the best looking woman in the world or a woman's with the best looking guy in the world, they're going to have days where they don't look good, right? People can't keep that look forever. I remember I had a friend, I used to play basketball at the YMCA in San Mateo. And this guy, he was a hooper, man. He played basketball for years, and then he came back. I hadn't seen him for years. And we had this run that we used to play at lunch. And he was fat. I know people don't like that term, that overweight. He was fat. He was out of shape. And I was talking to him and stuff. Like, I didn't even recognize him. Double chin, everything. And so we were talking, and he basically had an ankle injury, like a really bad ankle or leg injury, where he couldn't walk. So that's why he gained that kind of weight. And it took him a while to shed it. He also had bad eating habits and whatnot. But he had a kind of a built-in excuse why he was like that, and he didn't really lose the weight since then. Anyhow, I'm getting off topic here. We got 15 on deck, 4 likes. Thank you for the donation, CD Eduardo Martinez. It's always appreciated. Alternative Spirituality, who helps take care, who's in the field of animal care, I believe, which is noble and admirable, so I respect you for that. Linder Tube, I'm curious, how is this going to come full circle? You lost me a little with the story of and hypothesis. I lost myself, to be honest. Sometimes in the live stream, and right now, no coffee, no sugar, I'm a little off sometimes. Yes, these things you mentioned, Coach, absolutely essential. Skinner, you got my point. Completely agree, Mac. I just turned down a fine honey last weekend. She was surprised. I never chase, and I don't reschedule. Ooh, and I don't reschedule. I like that. It's not just about looks. It's at the end of the day. The city has like 5 zips. There you go. I think I was 94116, but for years it was 94403 for San Mateo. All right, folks, I'm going to get into the story because we got 15 on deck. Let's get a timestamp, 26 minutes. I'm going to get onto the story, and if you have questions, please throw them in the live stream. I'll come back to it. Let me pull this up real quick. First love, reconnected after 30 years. She writes, caution, long venting story. I don't mind long stories when you send them into writemac.com, as long as they make sense. That's all I care about, okay? As long as they make sense. I don't know what happened there. My ex and I dated when I was 15 and he was 17. So when I first read this, because I just read the first line, I'm like, how old are you? But then I looked at the title. So we dated for almost a year back then, and I had a breakup with him because he stopped coming around calling or showing any kind of interest in me or the relationship. Word got back to me that he was hanging out with his friends and messing around with other females. Well, he was 17. It was a different time. That's when I immediately cut off contact with a simple, I can't do this anymore. He never came to me to talk about what happened or work things out. About 3 years later, I ran into him. So she's 18, he's 20. I ran into him and, of course, beelined in his direction so we could talk. I was with someone else at the time, and about 30 seconds into us talking, my boyfriend at the time interrupted our talk. Well, that's a boyfriend that's got some gusto and some balls. That if you're beelining for someone else that was your past boyfriend, he does probably need to interrupt and ask what's going on with that. That was 1993. Where were you in 1993, folks? Wow, 1993. I was in middle school. I was probably about 12 or 13 years old. Again, my ex never came to me to work things out afterwards. Well, the situation's clear. He was 17 and he didn't want to be held down. I would have left my boyfriend at the time to be with him. He was my first love. Well, that says a lot. So you still, even though he left you the way he did, you still would have left your current boyfriend at 20 years old for him? Wow. Or 18. We were very young and we were not mature enough to be together at the time. So I thought, now that I'm writing this, I can see where I went wrong back then. Interesting. Very fast forward to October 2019. Very fast forward, or let's just say fast forward nearly 30 years. My ex reached out to me on social media. It was a rush of emotions. We talked about everything, and we were so open and honest with each other. I felt a true connection with this man, and I fell very hard and fast all over again. I was even able to ask him about the reason I broke up with him those years ago, which shocked him. I believed him when he told me that the rumors were not true and that the reason he never fought for me was because he was stubborn and scared that I was the love of his life, and that he had never forgotten me and never able to truly love anyone else. Wow. That's heavy. Within 3 months, we were a couple again. Timing and circumstances, 2019 was the year for you. We were happy for almost a year. The one kicker, dun dun, we were in long distance relationship. Well, that's not a kicker. That is unfortunate, because long distance relationships have an expiration date. But I was in love with him and wanted to give it a real mature adult try. Well, if it's 30 years later, you're in your mid 40s, I hope you're mature at this point. Early on, we established that neither of us could pick up and leave because he didn't want to leave his son. I couldn't leave my kids. We agreed that we would wait until our youngest graduated high school, 4 years. So you're going to do long distance. My question would be, have you met yet in person? Have you had some intimacy? Have you had dinner together? If you're going to do this online for 4 years, that's amazing. I wouldn't say don't give it a try, but I would say the odds are against you. Something that is really important and became harder for me as the relationship continued was the fact that he was only separated from his wife and not divorced. The separation happened one day prior to us reconnecting. My point early on in the live stream, people reach out to other people when they're vulnerable or they're broken up or they're looking for another option. The only reason I agreed to be together was because I believed him. So you agreed to be together in what time frame? How long was it that you talked online before you were quote unquote officially together? I believed him, and when he told me they hadn't been happy many years before they separated, 17-year relationship, as our relationship kept evolving, this became more of a problem. One of our first disagreements happened about 10 months in during one of his visits. We drove out to see his sister. First off, he didn't tell her about me until we were driving out. It was a great time until it wasn't. During the visit, his family mentioned his age, which was different than what he had told me. Why would the age be a surprise so did he lie to you when he was 17? Also, we were getting into the car. I noticed that he was texting his wife because, let's face it, that is what she is. I don't understand what that means. There's some red flags here. Honesty being one of them. And like when you first start seeing someone, there's little lies. That's a hint. I stayed quiet in the car for a little bit. Then I had to ask about his age and why he had been texting his wife while we were spending time together. If they have kids together, that's one reason. I understand that they had things to sort out about being together for so long, but I felt that there was, and keep in mind, you said they separated a day before you got together. The smoke hasn't cleared on that one. But I felt that there was a better time for that if it was an emergency. In my eyes, his response to me wanting to talk about this was over the top and one-sided. He jumped to all these assumptions and barely let me get a word in. I felt like a child being scolded by a parent. Well, how the relationship starts is how the relationship's going to continue. So if these are the things that happened in the beginning, I felt like a child being scolded by a parent when you had an issue with him, that's the way he argues. That's his playbook. If you accept it, then it'll carry on. We worked it out, and then at the end of the trip, I told him very calmly and level-headed that if he wants to be with me the right way, he needs to take his situation right and get a divorce. This was the first out of about 5 or 6 arguments we had over me asking too many questions about his wife. Okay, so bottom line is, why doesn't he want to get a divorce? Is it financial? I mean, he needs to give you the reason. he would get so upset anytime I asked absolute anything about her. So me walking on eggshells, I stopped talking to him about this, about his wife and divorce. Mistake number 2. Hindsight is 2020. Keep in mind, what stands out to me, it was a day after they separated that you got together. As time went by, I noticed that he wasn't posting anything about our relationship or that he was even in a relationship on social media. He also didn't like anything I posted, even when it was a declaration of our relationship that I had put on my page. Well, that's a huge red flag. He rarely acknowledged my comments or likes on his post. His dad passed away a couple of months prior. Sorry to hear that. And I tried my hardest to be there for him. But he shut me out, just telling me he was okay. Well, that's, okay, that's a separate thing. People, when they lose a loved one, dare I say a parent, how they deal with that, it's not uncommon for someone to shut people out. So that would be separate from your relationship or dealing with the idea that he's not officially divorced. But felt comfortable posting about it on social media. I felt like he was 2 different people showing and telling me one thing and being another person for others, especially on social media. I didn't say anything at this point. Mistake number 3. When someone's lost their father, and I don't want to think about that day because my father's still around, but when you lose a loved one, there's a lot of mixed emotions, and if they say they don't want to talk about it, you need to just back off. So the idea that he's posting things on social media, but he doesn't want to air things out with you, you need to give that space, that part. Our big blow up came when his wife reached out again via social media, wanting to know how long we had been together and if I knew they were still married. She saw my profile picture of me and him. I briefly talked to her, and after she continued by blocking me. Of course she blocked you. Well, I mean, does she feel like they're still married working things out, or is, there's too much smoke here. My biggest problem was my boyfriend's reaction to me telling him about what happened. He basically said, well, now she has closure. See, that's how a man communicates. He doesn't want to get into the feelings, emotions. He doesn't want to talk about it too much. A lot of men would respond that way. What did you want him to say? He also hadn't started the process to get a divorce that I had asked him to do over 8 months prior. Why? Number one, why is he not getting divorced? Is it financial? What's the reason? Is it for the kids? When I brought it up a second time, shit hit the fan. As per usual, he would rather overreact than try to talk about things, especially if it was about her. This was all via text most of the time, as he couldn't control his emotions, and that would hurt me and make me cry. Although I tried to not let him know that I was crying, although he denies it, he suggested a break. Right off the get-go, you're just not compatible. I know it sounds like a great story, 30 years reconnected, this is your first love and whatnot. You're not compatible. Your communications aren't on tact. It's long distance. There's too many things wrong here. It's kind of like you moved into a house, the water doesn't work, the toilet's broke, the roof has a leak, and you're going, hey, and then you're calling up the landlord and you're going, you got to fix these things. The landlord goes, nah, I'm not going to fix it. I'll give you a break on rent, though. We didn't talk for 2 weeks, and he eventually reached out and apologized and said that he loves me and wants to spend the rest of his life with me. Okay, let's go back to the fact that when you first met, he used the same approach. I always loved you. I always wanted to be with you. Hot, heavy, and heavy, and heavy, and extra sauce. Some people use this approach. Just be aware that someone that puts it on that heavy, that quickly, is it just to get you back? Or is it genuine? Took a break in the middle of February, started talking again in the beginning of March. He said he can't and won't be without me again. He bought me a ticket to go see him, and things were good again. Although now I see we really didn't talk about the real problems we were having. Mistake number 4. I was starting to fear communicating anything with him and was constantly walking on eggshells. Well, that's kind of your problem. If we were doing a live coaching session, I'd ask you, hey, has this happened to you in past relationships? Walking on eggshells is usually dealing with a partner that makes you the bad guy when you initiate a question with insinuating that they've done something wrong. I let him know this and that it was destroying our relationship. 3 days before going to visit him, trip was March 19, 2021. I asked one innocent question. So here's what you keep feeling like. I'm asking reasonable, soft, innocent questions, and he's blowing up on me. This is the way he communicates if he doesn't like what you say. He exploded saying that these types of questions almost destroyed us not even 2 weeks prior, and how I could even ask it. I was starting to get upset, annoyed at this point. I basically told him that I was aware that any question about social media was off the table. Social media is messy. The fact that it's such a big deal to you, why? I mean, we went back and forth a few times, and then the "I don't think we are going to work" text came in. I stayed calm, and I told him that if that's what he really wanted, I hope his decision makes him happy. He took the breakup back really fast, and I ended up visiting him. I know. See, here's the thing. If you're going to be in a long-distance relationship, it's got to be way stronger than this. You can't make up to breakup in long-distance relationships as a habit. I noticed that the couple of days prior to me coming out, we really weren't talking much, and that even when I would either respond to his text or I would send him one, he was active on social media, but was very slow to respond to me saying he was sleeping. When I went to see him, I felt a very deep disconnection between us, probably more than him. Well, you don't know how he feels, but bottom line is this isn't a good relationship, and it's just the beginning. Having a feeling of deep disconnection when you see someone that's a long-distance partner is no bueno. It's not good. He told when I got there, after everything had already been arranged, that he was going to pick up his son back home. He travels heavily from work and was a problem in his marriage as well, and bring him back with him. That he had bought a ticket for his wife to pick him up after the week was done, since he couldn't leave again, and she was going to be staying in a hotel separate from them. I really don't understand why his son couldn't have flown back by himself. Well, here's the thing. You have an issue with the ex-wife. You have an issue with a lot of things with him. I just don't think he's changing. He's 15, but I didn't mention anything, again, out of fear and even a little restraint, even though in the same conversation he had told me how bad that I feared talking to him now. If you're with a partner that you feel like you can't ask direct questions, and that's something that you feel like is their fault, look in the mirror and ask yourself, what am I accepting? After the first 10 months of dating, what I thought the time had come as a mutual decision that he wanted to move to be with me, I was in the process of buying a house regardless. Now, we could make a life together in it. I honestly, from what you've told me, I wouldn't suggest that you move. I mean, I wouldn't put a lot. The way this thing started, it might change if you live together. Okay, you might want to try that, but definitely don't get married right away. He told me about great job opportunities where I live and how we were going to share financial and life responsibilities. It was beautiful. But as time went by, he kept either giving me mixed feelings or talking about it less and less as the months passed. The house is almost done, and I needed some help. Not financially, but the distance between us was slowly becoming the Grand Canyon itself. Great description. Are you a writer? He seemed distant, slow to respond, annoyed, active on social media, but telling me he was just super busy. All these things are red flags, and It's very difficult to be in a long distance relationship doing what you said. He would say all the beautiful things I wanted to hear, which he did from the beginning. In the beginning, I always loved you. I always wanted to be with you. And then when he got you back, I heavy. But his actions just didn't seem to match. So hearing this from me and hearing this, reading this when you write this, why are you with him? He told me in the beginning that he doesn't argue, but I beg to differ. Seems he's the one who can't control his emotions and thoughts when we don't see eye to eye. Red flag. I felt the need to want to try and communicate that the long distance was starting to become hard and we hadn't talked about what our future goals together in quite a while. Told him what I wanted to call him, and he basically shut me down, saying that all we are going to do was fight. So yeah, it just sounds like you guys communicate in different ways. Arguing is okay if you can make up at the end. Not about anything with substance. At this point, we didn't talk about anything really. It was a bunch of I miss you from this end, but anytime I would tell him I love you, he would respond with ditto. Oh my goodness, ghost. The great Patrick Swayze, right? Ditto. Cringe. Things were just not the same. Well, here's the thing. Your feelings are probably 10 times deeper than his. He's much more casual about this relationship. And you think it's not fair, but it's just real. After a lot of reading and YouTubes, I can say that his interest level had gone way down. I love him so much that I turned a blind eye, although I know I have made some mistakes on setting boundaries and expressing my needs timely. I don't think if you would have expressed boundaries or did things differently, that this relationship would have went well. He's not ready. He's not at the level of love that you have, and so you need to move on. It's not necessarily what you did wrong. It's just not the right match for you. And the fact that it's a 30 years reconnection, first love, it sounds Hollywood. It sounds great. But the reality is you don't match up. You didn't match up then, and you don't match up now. I don't feel that I deserve the reaction he had towards me when we wanted to communicate. Yeah, you didn't deserve it, so don't accept it. So I told him that I was going to call him so we can talk about how we can make our situation better. He basically shut me down and said no because we're only going to argue. So basically, if there's anything that takes criticism on his end, he goes silent treatment and he just puts up a wall. You can't have a relationship with someone like that. I felt so disrespected and I felt like he just didn't care about us anymore. Okay, so what are you going to do about it? Are you going to continue to be with him? That was probably the beginning of the end. He seemed annoyed and bothered by me, just straight rude. We went back and forth a little, and he told me, let's take a step back and talk a little later. That's when he once again sent me this isn't going to work out text. That was the third time in just a little over a month. It isn't going to work out. My mistake came after this. I responded with assertive but emotional text. I was hurt. I basically told him that I've had enough and that I was the last time he breaks up with me. That if he wants life without me, I'll give that to him. He responded with one word, bye. We had a family trip planned with my kids and his sisters, mom and son, and had a Facebook group, and his sister got together. We would talk about the trip on his group. Not even 2 minutes after the bye text, I was kicked off the group. I messaged him and commented on how mature that was. Well, if it was 2 minutes after, or it was 20 minutes, or it was 2 hours after, you're broken up, and you told him that you'd give him the breakup, you're breaking up. You're not going to be in the friends group. So whether that really upset you that he didn't do it an hour later or 2 hours later, and by the way, there's a lot of value being put on these friends groups. He kept on with the arrogant messages and finally told him, "You are not the man I thought you were. We are not for each other." Thank you. Thank you. This is why you write out your story, folks. Those are your words. That's your definitive statement. That's the issue. He's not the man you thought he was, and you're not for each other. All the other stuff proved it. This whole story proved it. Now let go. And the fact that he hurt you, that he put things on Facebook, that he never separated from, that he never divorced his wife, it doesn't matter at this point. If you're having trouble with this, we'll have to do a live coaching session. He kept on, so I blocked him on social media and erased his number. I feel I could have responded with less emotion, but I was extremely hurt and disappointed. The emotion's not a problem. This is a third breakup in a short period of time. You feel disrespected. You feel hurt. Accepting that you're hurt and you're crying, that's okay. Don't fight that. That's not good for you. That's not good for you. You feel like if you didn't show those emotions, you'd be tougher or you'd be together still. This, bottom line, here you go. You are not the man I thought you were. We are not for each other. That's it. That's it. There you go. That's all, folks. That's it. That was 3 weeks ago. I've worked so hard to become the person I am today. Congratulations. I have let myself be taken advantage of in my life so many times, and I'm trying to break the cycle of being someone's doormat. Well, that's a statement we have to unpack with past relationships and whatever happened with your parents as a kid, because it's deeper. I don't talk about this a lot, but a lot of times in breakup coaching, we get a lot deeper than just the breakup. And a statement like that is saying that you are in constant relationships similar to this, and I can help you with that. This breakup has left me feeling so brokenhearted. Well, that's understandable, because you put your heart on a clothesline. You thought it was going to be more than it was, and he had told you some things that insinuated that he was serious. And the good news is you knew when to walk away. I know that I have some things to work out with me so that I can be happy in my life, such as being confident about expressing my needs and setting healthier boundaries. I want to be clear on this. If you had expressed your needs and setting healthy boundaries with this man, I don't think it would have worked out. So a lot of times you look back and you're like, oh, if I would have done this differently, this wasn't going to work out. This wasn't going to work out. So I have decided to go no contact. Good move. I know this is long, but I needed to get it out of my head and somewhere else. So I did what I love best. I wrote. Well, you wrote it beautifully. You wrote it honestly. You were vulnerable, and I applaud you for that. Okay? There's nothing wrong here. The problem is that you need to get back to that statement. I have let myself be taken advantage of in my life so many times, and I'm trying to break the cycle of being someone's doormat. That's the silver lining here. That statement reveals to you where you have control, where you realized, man, this has happened before. I don't want to be in a relationship like this again. That's the statement to go to work on. That's the statement to unpack past relationships. And where's the seed to that? Where's the root of that? Where's that coming from? Because that's not coming from this relationship. I've let myself be taken advantage of my life so many times. So you're entering into these relationships unknowingly, subconsciously, in bad relationships. That's something that I can help you with if you would do a live coaching session. But I think in this story, you handled things as well as you could have. And going no contact, do not allow this person back into your life. I don't usually say that. He's not all in. He's not the communicator you are. and you're on just different wavelengths, and that's just not going to work. And that's okay. That's okay. To agree to disagree is okay. There's a lot of value in cutting ties with someone that you don't line up with in the first year, because you're not going to line up with them 10 years down the road. A lot of people think, oh, they don't communicate well. Oh, they don't do this. Oh, they don't argue correctly. A lot of times you're not going to change that. All right, folks, I'll check the live stream right now. Clutch says, oh no, you took your message down. I don't know why that would be. Oh, okay. Don't explain emotions to someone who doesn't respect them. Really? I agree. Oh, she really wanted this relationship to work. This is some dysfunctional push and pull, but classic example of how pulling away and not being all in can make someone chase. I think what we don't realize, and this is something I realize more because I see so many different relationships and breakups and relationships in different age groups, is when you're dealing with people in their mid 40s to mid 50s, and they get into a deep relationship, and I'm just going to assume she's mid 40s because she said 15 at the beginning, and then she said 30 years later, so 45. And then they have kids, so they've had some divorces. There's some wreckage out there. I think when you find a new relationship, the relationship that's being looked for is never going to be casual. So what do I mean by that is that especially women, if they've got kids, they feel vulnerable. And they're in their 40s, they feel vulnerable to the fact that they really want a life partner. They want to get married again. They want to settle down. Not all, but a lot. Where in your 20s, you can have a lot of casual relationships and not get hurt. Even in your 30s, I would say. But I'd say when both people have kids and ex-wives or ex-husbands, you're more sensitive to when a relationship doesn't work because you're putting a lot into that. Whereas in your 20s, I think there's a lot less into it. There's a lot less invested. The idea of moving in together, helping each other out with your kids, it's deeper. And I've noticed that. You know, like I said, they're not looking for casual relationships. And if they've been married before, a lot of times, whatever happened in a long-term marriage, they'll take into that next relationship. And if you can supply what that marriage didn't supply, it's like a drug. So, for example, a client of mine had a complete lack of intimacy the last 5-6 years of their marriage. And that was really the reason why they ended up getting divorced. He was like, I still wanted to have intimacy, and she was done. And he's like, I still loved her. We had a good relationship, but I couldn't do it anymore. So his first girlfriend, surprise, surprise, extremely good intimacy. But she's got some issues. But he doesn't care because he's getting his fix of what he didn't get for 5 years. So there's always a sacrifice, but where the value of doing a live coaching session with myself or another coach, or Clutch is on here right now. He doesn't do coaching anymore, but is you need to unpack these to realize it's deeper than walking on eggshells. It's deeper than just being hurt. There's a why there. And there's a why you deal with someone and feel like you're a doormat. There's a why. And to get to that why is the start of you healing and changing some things. All right, folks, I'm about an hour on. Does anyone have any closing questions? Good points, Mac. I'll consider all this after my second divorce in my late 40s. Hopefully not. Don't get married. What's the choice? Well, here's what's interesting. In my experience, men in their 40s that have been divorced a couple times don't ever want to get married again. But women in their 40s, they want to get married again usually. They want a long-term connection. No problem, Clutch. I'm gonna have to send you a text soon. Maybe tomorrow or the next day. I'd like to do get you on a call and talk about some things. $24.99 in chat revenue today. Thank you, folks. I do appreciate the chat revenue. I do appreciate. It does help me do these live streams every day. $25. I really do. What I'm gonna do is I'll be on tomorrow, same time. So that's 11:30 a.m. Thailand time, or 10 minutes off, a couple minutes off. I'll be on the same time tomorrow. I'll rejoin the Discord on my other account when I get a PC back from warranty. Right on, CD. Mary, how are you? Are you okay? I'll be back in Cali next Sunday. I'll have nothing but time while I quarantine. Okay, bud. I think the topics I want to talk about with you is your PUA days, your pickup artist days, and some of the lines that you guys have dealing with how that can transfer over to help people with dating would be really interesting. Maybe go down the attachment theory route again. But I'd really like to ask you about I think that would be interesting to get someone that is a PUA pickup artist in the past, not anymore, I don't think, but some ways that you dated and how that would transfer over to dating now. That would be really interesting. Good night to me. Thanks, Mac. Have a good one. Everyone respect, love yourselves, and value your time. Thanks, bud. Yeah, I think that's that would be fun to talk about. Everyone wants to learn my wit. Practice, kids. All right, folks. I'm going to take a break. I got to do a live coaching later on this afternoon, so I got to save my voice a bit here. Still on my sugar fast and coffee fast, but I'm feeling a lot better than a couple days ago. Jen, you have a great night yourself, hon. All right, take it easy, curtains. I scheduled a talk with you? Okay, I look forward to it.